A win for the Indiana Pacers over the Houston Rockets. Tyrese Haliburton, amazing again. The Pacers down the stretch. Oh boy, were they good. Myles Turner leading the way there. How far have the Pacers come this season? Boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to discuss on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, diving into Pacers Rockets, a win for the Pacers against a good Rockets team, albeit in some tough circumstances. Good win for the Pacers, who did a lot of problem solving throughout the game. They were awesome when things got tough. Tyrese Haliburton was just fantastic. Once again, they got little chip-ins here and there. And this game was a great measuring stick from how different the Pacers are now to how things were early in the season. And I really just want to talk about that because it was jarring to think back to the first Rockets game, which Tyrese Haliburton reminded us about after the game. And he is the story. I mean, I think talking about the last 8 minutes is really important. I think Myles Turner's close is important. Lots of stuff mattered for the Pacers to get this win. They figured out what they were doing wrong against a zone, and they themselves deployed a zone, which is very rare. All that stuff matters a lot, right? Little things here and there. They weren't the big thing. The big thing was Tyrese Haliburton continuing to just mash teams. My God, was he good in this game. Tyrese Haliburton, 36 minutes. Pacers won those minutes by 20. That means in the 12 minutes he was not on the floor. They lost them by 7, which matters a great deal against a Rockets team that had a very good bench. Tyrese Haliburton, 5 for 8 on threes, 4 for 8 on twos. If he's getting up 8 twos, you know it's a good game. And a noteworthy part of this was his trainer, Drew Hanlon, who works with Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum, a bunch of other good players, was at this game, sitting, I believe, courtside, like right next to Haliburton's parents. And, you know, we hear from Tyrese all the time about this, that Drew Hanlon tells him to shoot, right? Drew Hanlon was originally the guy that told him, hey, if you're going to be an all-star one day, you're going to have to shoot more than you do now. And there's this story Tyrese told us before about how when he was with the Kings and Drew Hanlon was even considering taking him on as a client, you know, he had a game in Philly where Drew Hanlon told him he's going to have to shoot more and score more if that's going to be a relationship that exists. And he had like 30 points and a career high that night in Philly for the Kings. They've worked together ever since. He jokes that Drew Hanlon always sends him a picture and says, look at the orange thing during games. Well, Tyrese Haliburton was certainly looking at the orange thing, a.k.a. the rim today. 16 shots. That's always a healthy number for him to get to. I've talked ad nauseum about him getting up his own looks when he's a self-creator. And he's able to be a self-creator because he's playing so much better recently, right? I don't need to rehash the exact same points every podcast, although I could, because it has been the story for the Pacers in just about every win they've had since the All-Star break, as he's turned a corner into just being special again. But, you know, getting to the basket for 8 shots plus getting fouled enough to get up 5 free throws, half of the Pacers' total attempts. Not a high free throw game for the Pacers the way it was being called. Only 2 officials for most of this game. The third one left early for reasons that I still don't know. Regardless, for Haliburton to have that kind of game on the interior usually spells good things for him, and it did in this game. 8 threes and making 5 of them obviously matters, but getting to the basket, 2 feet in the paint, the stuff that Kami was talking about in this podcast yesterday, is just so important for him. 15 assists, nearly half of them 7, coming in the third quarter. The Rockets were playing such interesting defense in this game, right? They have talented defenders already in Amen Thompson, in Tari Eason, in Jabari Smith, in Dylan Brooks. They have guys who make life hard for anyone. Haliburton, Nembhard, whoever, right? And he still was getting into space against them. And in the second half, the Rockets would do similar to what we saw the Bulls do in this last game the Pacers played, send kind of 2 up to Haliburton at times, especially if he would go certain directions. And then they went to this weird zone and tried to get it out to force corner threes or force the Pacers to play in a really weird way. It wasn't a 2-3 zone. Şengün was up high, so you can't just throw it into the middle of the floor. It did lead to some easy high-low stuff for the Pacers, but it was tough to deal with at times. And Haliburton solved it, right? He got his scoring going late. His 5 points in the fourth quarter effectively put the game away. He was special, absolutely special. 15 assists. The Rockets as a team had 22, 28 and 15, 6 straight double-double, all points assists. I mean, just an absurd assist to turnover ratio every single game he plays. And when he plays like this, when he's out there, the Pacers are just so hard to stop. Since the All-Star break, he has one game where he did not have a points assist double-double. It was the Memphis game where he had 22 points and 9 assists. What was he thinking? Missing that one assist. You know what's funny about that Memphis game? That is his worst three-point shooting game since the All-Star break as well. He went 4 for 11, 36%. Haliburton's three-point percentages by game since the break. This is obviously absurdly unsustainable, right? 4 for 11 against Memphis, 4 for 8 against the Clippers, 5 for 10 against Denver, 7 for 9 against Toronto, 3 for 5 against Miami, 2 for 4 against Chicago, and then 5 for 8 today. That is just ridiculous. That is 7 games in a row at 50% or better. If I'm counting right. I mean, that can't hold. That's 6 games, excuse me. That can't hold, obviously. Like, if that held, he'd be the best player in the league. But he is playing at an absurd level, pairing that with the assist. This was his first multi-turnover game since the All-Star break. He had 2. The second one, he threw it ahead to Siakam, who was wide open for a layup or dunk. And Siakam got held by a defender and couldn't reach the ball. Haliburton begging for a foul call. Right? And I think his first turnover had some foul thing going on too. People were saying I can't remember it. Regardless, magnificent game. Controlled everything. The Rockets adjusted to him in the same way the Bulls did 2 nights ago. And it just leads to stuff for other people. That's why he has 15 assists. And yet then, when the Rockets really own in and try to stop everything, Haliburton wiggles free for a floater and hits a 3 and the game's over. And he's just playing amazing right now. Absolutely incredible how well he's playing, carrying the Pacers to wins in a way that he was not doing earlier in the season. This is obviously the best he's played all year. It's not even close. This is approaching early last season levels of just ridiculousness. I mean, the way he's shooting, it's like getting very close to matching it. He was an All-NBA player last season. And I floated this question to somebody in Media Row during the game, and I'll float it to you now on this podcast. And I texted Derek Kramer, the GOAT, about it. It's not impossible to me that Haliburton gets All-NBA this season. I would put the chances pretty low, like 10%, 15% or lower, right? Obviously, again, he's not going to shoot this well forever. You know, it's very likely that very soon he stops shooting this well. The assist numbers can maintain. We know that because it's happened before. And his potential assists for most of the season were basically where they were at last year. Like, his teammates aren't shooting as well. That's fine. I expect his assist numbers will remain relatively steady, right? He looks faster. He's getting deeper in the paint. Again, the shooting will drop, which means the scoring will drop, but not a ton. Like, I think he could be about the average numbers we've seen in past seasons. I think he can be a 20 and 10 guy the rest of the way. The shooting's not going to be there. But if he keeps shooting this well for, let's say, 2 more weeks, right, he could very, very, very realistically get back to close to the numbers we've seen from him in recent seasons. He's already at 18.4 and 8.8, right? He was at 20 and 10.9 last year. If he can sniff 20 and 10 for the 3rd straight season, and his 3-point percentage is approaching 40 very quickly, like, he's going to get in the mix for this conversation. And I only say that not because I think per one game he's been one of the best 15 players this year. Obviously, through the NBA Cup, he was not good. He would admit that himself. And that is ultimately why I think he won't get it. That's a big chunk of the season. It's over a quarter of the season, right? And those first impressions matter so much for voters. However, Kyrie Irving out for the year now. Like, all these guys are not going to get to 65 games. That means the 15th player for All-NBA this year is like Karl Towns or Anthony Edwards or, you know, something approaching that level of player. Those guys have been better than Haliburton this year, right? But, like, is it impossible to me that he could keep playing this well for like 2-3 more weeks and those conversations start happening a lot? No, it's not impossible. He looks amazing right now. It's up to him to keep it up, right? This is only, you know, we're talking 12 days right now, 2 weeks-ish. They'll probably play well against Atlanta because their defense is porous, but he's at that level where I think if he keeps doing this for a little longer, you'll start to hear those conversations. If it gets to a really big crescendo, I will talk more about this, but Haliburton making All-NBA financially could matter for him this year because of the way the Supermax works, and it actually could lead to increased chances he stays with the Pacers for longer. That is obviously, again, a conversation for later, but he has, since the All-Star break, played at absolutely an All-NBA level. This is the best he's played all year. Since the NBA Cup, he's just been ridiculous. This is the best he's played in ages. He looks amazing. The Rockets had very few answers for him. The Pacers won because of him. He's been brilliant for weeks now. And if he can keep it up, the Pacers will keep winning games and keep staying in that 4, 5, 6 range. They're very close to me saying, yeah, it's almost a certainty they'll make the playoffs, but we got to get a little farther for that. We'll start doing standings watch next week when there's about a month of the season to go, and we'll talk about the teams around them in the standings, the teams they could play in the first round, their inverse standings, things like that. Too early for that. Other stuff from this game: Myles Turner's late play, the Pacers' final 8 minutes, some other good stuff that mattered coming up here in just a moment. Before we do any of that, we got to talk about OpenPhone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls all day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That is where OpenPhone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate for just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees. You get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. If you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, OpenPhone is offering you 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnNBA for 20% off 6 months. OpenPhone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks as always for making us your first listen today and every single day. Locked On Rockets, your second listen. Jackson Gatlin crushes it. Very fun team. Tough situation. Back-to-back, no Fred VanVleet. There's still a pain in the rear to play. As you saw, their defense can be creative. They went double big with Şengün and Steven Adams. It was giving the Pacers fits. It was unique. It's a lineup they never go to. And then the Pacers figured it out. Pacers did a great job adjusting in this game. They figured out how to beat the Rockets zone pretty quickly. They did good against it in the first half and late when it mattered. They did have some rocky moments in the third quarter. And the Pacers went zone themselves. That never happens. Rockets do not have a lot of shooting at all. They took 33s. They only made 9. Jalen Green was off. Nembhard did awesome on him. And that zone really cooked things up, especially against those two big groups. It really helped the Pacers, and it kept people around the rim for rebounding, which the Pacers needed anything to help them with. By God, we'll talk about that later. The crazy thing in this game that almost was my lead because of how good it was. Pacers were up big in the third quarter, watched their lead dwindle away because they couldn't handle his own defense for a stretch. We've seen that game 100 times this year for them. Not actually 100, obviously. Magic, Bucks, I could go down the line. There's obviously more. And it felt like a game hanging in the balance, especially as the Pacers bench struggled. And then the Rockets took the lead for the first time since the second quarter with 8 minutes and 45 seconds to go on an Amen Thompson layup, 96-95 with 8:45 to go. Myles Turner had just checked in the game. And for the next 5 minutes on the dot of play, the Rockets scored no points. 3:45 on the dot. Jabari Smith finally hit a free throw. The Pacers defense was awesome down the stretch of this game. And Turner, who had a wobbly night, right, struggling with Şengün, not a good rebounding game for him. He foul trouble early meant he wasn't able to have as many chances to be impactful on offense, was sensational late. Rick Carlisle noted it. Right after that Amen Thompson layup, Aaron Nesmith hits a huge and one floater. Very next Rockets possession was insane. Dillon Brooks misses a 3. Tari Eason gets a rebound. Turner blocks it. Eason rebound. Turner stops it. Eason rebound. Turner stops it again. Eason tip layup doesn't go. And then Turner blocks it. Dillon Brooks layup. Obviously a tragedy that the Pacers allowed that many offensive rebounds that fast. And Myles Turner not guarding Dillon Brooks or Tari Eason at the time. Regardless, 2 blocks. Pacers secure the board. And the Rockets just never got back on track. That 2-sequence play, the Aaron Nesmith and one floater followed by that stop, I think really amped up the Pacers. Myles Turner hits a 3 for the Pacers' next basket. Aaron Nesmith hits a running finger roll. Pacers are up 7. Rockets take a timeout. Doesn't help at all. Turner kept defending very well. And then Haliburton had his little 5-point flurry that really put it away. In the final 8 minutes and 45 seconds, it's much easier to just say 9 minutes, so I will for the rest of this podcast. The Pacers outscored the Rockets 20-6 in that stretch. They were awesome on defense. You could talk about that free throw from Jabari Smith. They didn't score again until the 2:58 mark. So after Turner came in, The Rockets hit one shot for over 6 minutes before that Tari Eason dunk. He was awesome protecting the paint lane. And again, he wasn't until then in this game, but he really turned it up when it mattered and then hit the dagger three with 97 seconds to go to get to 16 points and get Haliburton his 15 assists. The Pacers did a lot of stuff very well late, right? Haliburton was very good. I thought Andrew Nembhard was really good at this zone busting, right? The way the Pacers kind of figured it out is they would draw the double the Rockets were willing to do because Şengün was so high in the zone. They would kick it to the other guard who would take the space in front of them now because of the double. Then as soon as the rotation would come, they'd throw a skip pass because the Rockets can't rotate back to the ball and then across another defender. And that got a lot of wide open shots out of it. It wasn't like that simple. The Pacers were doing a lot to open the skip pass with screens up on stuff like that. But that got Turner open three. That got Nesmith a really open lane to the rim. And then Haliburton obviously just busted his way through the zone a few times. So really good adjustments to get that done. But that last 8-9 minutes of the game, and Myles Turner specifically in that stretch, was really important. And again, he did not have an awesome game to that point. He finishes plus 14, but 4 fouls, early trouble there. He only had 4 boards, and the Rockets kicked the Pacers' tails on the glass. We will again talk about that later. The early foul trouble was concerning, and Şengün was the only thing going for the Rockets. He had 25, 9, and 7 in this game. He was only -2. They did very well in his minutes, but Turner really turned it up late, and he was like the catalyst to me for the Pacers turning it around in the final minutes. Lots of other guys had good games as well. Aaron Nesmith, a very unique night for him. He's been really good since the All-Star break. He had 16 points, following up his career high 27. However, when he had 27, he made 6 threes. Tonight, he made 1, and he still had 16 points, got to the foul line, and made 6 twos on 7 attempts. He was awesome inside the arc. Reiterating once again what I keep saying about him since the break, what looks better is the stuff inside the arc. When he's run off the line, he's to put the ball on the floor and make a play, whatever it is, finish, pass, whatever. He didn't have an assist, but he just kept the game flowing, and he kept finishing, and he hit maybe the biggest shot of the game to immediately neutralize a Rockets lead, the only Rockets lead in the fourth quarter. He's been very good of late. He was good again in this game. I thought he was important. It's crazy that this is like a very pedestrian Siakam night, and he had 18 points, but he had a huge stretch at the beginning of the second quarter where I think he scored 6 or 8 points in a row. He was not efficient in this one. He didn't see the impact you've seen from Siakam a lot this season, but that stretch in particular was very important. Andrew Nembhard, I talked about his assists late being important. He, despite only going 2 for 6, was a team high plus 20 because he had 4 steals and 2 blocks, as well as 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 5 points. But he had 4 steals and 2 blocks, and his primary assignment, Jalen Green, who on this Rockets team without Fred VanVleet is the best ball handler and creator by far. Jalen Green went 4 for 13 in this game with 2 assists and 5 turnovers. Nembhard did an awesome job on him, and without him able to create efficiently, they were really reliant on either Şengün playing through the post or Amen Thompson creating, and Thompson played pretty well, I think, but actually the Rockets did a dead draw on Amen Thompson's minutes. Regardless, really great Andrew Nembhard game. Every starter pitched in a very meaningful way for the Pacers, which mattered a lot because the bench wasn't particularly good. Obi Toppin and Thomas Bryant will get the final 2 call-outs for this segment of good things for the Pacers. Toppin, on his birthday, 4 for 6, hit 3 huge threes. And this is another game, I forget which one it was last month where I felt this way, but the Rockets don't play particularly fast. And Toppin just sometimes has these games where he alone can come in and just juice up the basketball, right? Really get things moving in a way that in these grinded out, slower games, he gets the tempo going on his own. And that makes him such an important part of the matchup. And in this game, you could see that. He came in, the Rockets couldn't really keep up with what he wanted to do and how the Pacers were playing when he was out there getting to the corners, putting pressure on the rim. 13 points, 5 boards, plus 18 was Obi Toppin. Some of the Pacers' best moments came when he was out there. And Thomas Bryant finishes with 10 points. All of them came early. He had 5 boards. He was pretty good. It was very meaningful the way he played early in this game. It very much cooled off. His defense was not good in this game, but he scored early and hit both of his threes in the first quarter when Turner went into foul trouble. Very rarely did Thomas Bryant match up with Şengün in this game. In fact, a lot of times when Şengün came in or out, the Turner subs would happen simultaneously outside of that first quarter stretch where Thomas Bryant had to go in with the starters in a very tough game. He was great early. It was by far his best quarter of the game, and the Pacers needed him to be good at that time. He wasn't as good in any stretch the rest of the game, but to have that moment when he did was very, very important today. And all of that stuff mattered for the Pacers. Their own zone defense cooked up the Rockets. They solved the Rockets zone. They closed the game very well. Every starter had pockets of the game where they were very good at one thing or another. And they beat a good Rockets team. Top 5, top 4, I can't remember, in the Western Conference. And a team that really pantsed the Pacers earlier this season. I want to talk about that and then some not so great stuff for the Pacers in this game to close out today's Locked On Pacers. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Who's in your support system? We all need people to lead on, whether it's friends, family, mentors, or professionals. Even the strongest leaders and athletes know that asking for help makes them better. Therapy is one of the best ways to build a strong support system. It's not just for tough times. It helps with setting boundaries, developing coping skills, and becoming the best version of yourself. Therapy isn't just about crisis moments. It's a tool for self-improvement, stress management, and navigating life's challenges. And BetterHelp is fully online, making it easier than ever to connect with a licensed therapist from anywhere. With over 30,000 professionals available, you can find the right fit and switch anytime at no additional charge. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen should be Locked On Mavs. Kyrie Irving's out for the year. Oh, no. And a lot of next year. Oh, no. Don't look at the Mavs injury report. Oh, God, the Mavs. Locked On Mavs will break down. Oh, I already listened. It's sad. Okay. This was a game that really struck me because of the progress the Pacers have made. Their turnaround has been well documented here and other places. Tyrese Haliburton was talking after the game about his season and reflection and all this stuff. You know, Dustin Operick and I were talking to him about how he was feeling and how it compares to how he felt early in the season. And he mentioned that as a part of this game, his prep was watching the first Rockets game the Pacers played. For those of you who don't remember that, let me talk to you about that game very quickly. The Pacers' leading scorer in that game, for those who remember astutely, was Quentin Jackson, who had 24 points. He was quite good. This is not to slam on Quentin Jackson. He was very good in that game, right? Their leading player in minutes off the bench in Houston that night was Johnny Furphy, who played 21 minutes that game. Pascal Siakam was pretty good. This was during McConnell's best stretch of the season. That's it. Pacers got smoked by 17. They could not stop the Rockets at all. Şengün had 31. Jabari Smith had 23. Van Vliet and Jalen Green were good. Obviously, the Pacers were banged up at the time. But Tyrese Haliburton specifically, in Houston, 30 minutes, 1 for 7, 1 for 5 from 3, 4 points. The progress the Pacers have made in terms of the growth of their team, Tyrese Haliburton's turnaround from that point to now cannot be overstated, thinking back on how much they had no chance against. They couldn't stop the Rockets that night. The Rockets, it's just, they allowed 25 less points tonight. Haliburton was way better. Lots of players were way better. Quentin Jackson was worse. Siakam and McConnell were a little worse. Basically, everybody else was better, right? Like, it's remarkable. Enrique Freeman was the backup center. I mean, it's just so much has changed for the Pacers. And it was really a measuring stick of how, including the injuries, how much their early season struggles and shorthandedness were on display and how much better they can be when they're not dealing with that stuff on both ends. They were able to score better and defend better. And again, beat a Rockets team that's pretty good. I thought this would be a tough game for the Pacers stylistically. In some ways it was, but they figured it out. Okay, some not good stuff happened in this game. I don't know if worried is the right word, but there are some noises. The DEFCON level might be raising about the Pacers bench. I mean, even on nights where it feels like some of their guys have good stats. Thomas Bryant was 4 for 5. Obi Toppin's 4 for 6. Ben Shepherd's 2 for 4. Jarris Walker was totally fine. Made his only shot. He played both halves. And that they're just not effective. Like last year, they were winning the Pacers games a lot, especially this time of year in March. This is right when their season flipped, and every night, early fourth quarter, Pacers bench puts the team away. And they're not bad. They still are a good scoring group, but that superpower is gone for whatever reason. Today, like, again, you can look at their stats and say a lot of these guys were okay, like they did what they're usually asked to do, but their defense was just awful in this game. And it wasn't even like they're going against a super-powered Rockets group, but, they'd be out there against Steven Adams, Reed Shepherd, Tari Eason, and two Rocket starters and could not get stops. Look at the game chart for this game. Early second quarter, Rockets were better. Late first quarter was about even. Late third quarter, way advantage Rockets. Early fourth quarter, way advantage Rockets. I mean, it's just been really strange that a group that was so good and connected made so much sense last year, and they were without Mathurin today. Obviously, that matters. But they have not been as good this year for whatever reason, and the Pacers have found solutions with their mixing and matching, and the way they stagger Haliburton and Siakam clearly works. But their bench continues to have games where I'm like, man, they need to this group needs to be better. Some of it comes down to McConnell not being the same guy he was last year, but it's not all that, right? And they've got to figure it out. Today was their defense, right? It wasn't that McConnell couldn't score. They couldn't get stopped. So I'm not concerned. We have lots of track record, including early this season at times, of this bench being better than this, but they have been kind of meh at best for a little bit. Now, I would like to dive into that in more detail. Probably won't have the chance this week. We'll see, but not good. This game specifically, beyond the bench, the concerning thing, what was happening on the glass? Now, to be clear, this is the Houston Rockets. This is what they do. They are not a single possession efficient team. They're a good defense, fourth, pretty dang good defense. They are awesome on the glass, right? They are going to hit the glass. I think they're first. Yes, they're first in offensive rebound rate by like 2 percentage points, right? And they're okay on the defensive rebound rate, but that means their total rebound rate is first. They're a good rebounding team. I would have picked them to win the rebounding battle, even if I knew the Pacers were going to win. 58-35? Huh? I mean, and the defensive rebounds were actually pretty even, right? You know how I do this. Pacers missed 42 shots, did not miss a free throw. Rockets missed 58 shots. In some ways, that the rebounding battle should reflect the number of misses in the game, and it didn't. The Rockets had 24 offensive rebounds, 8 for Tari Eason. I know Turner did not have a good rebounding game. I already said it. And in fact, a lot of these games I've been running through these issues, he's had better rebounding games than this. He was not good today. 3 for Şengün, 2 for Steven Adams, 8 for Tari Eason, 5 for Jabari Smith, 3 for Dillon Brooks. This is what the Rockets want to do. Yes, this is somewhat a Turner thing. I've said the same thing a million times. This is an everyone thing. Jabari Smith was being guarded by Siakam, right? A lot of time. Amen Thompson was being guarded by Siakam. He had 3 offensive rebounds. Jabari Smith being guarded by Aaron Nesmith. I get the height advantage, whatever. Dillon Brooks being guarded by Haliburton, right? Those guys right there had 11 offensive rebounds. It's everybody. And it's Turner too. I just think people are pointing way too many fingers at one guy. The whole team has been bad on the glass, especially of late. It was really rough today. This could have cost them the game. I mean, and the Pacers were very efficient. 17 for 42 from deep. They shot 51% from the field. They had 11 turnovers. Like, they did pretty good in a lot of categories that helped them when they did not miss a free throw. Like, they took care of a lot of little stuff. But the Rockets, because they only had 14 turnovers, that's fine, and had 24 offensive rebounds, they took 16 more free throws and 12 more shots. They shot over 10% worse from the field and from 3, and were in it until the last 5 minutes because they just had so many more chances. Oh, it was so brutal. Some of them were really bad. Some of them were justifiable ball bounces, but it's got to be better from every Pacers player. The rebounding has got to be better. Multiple times, Carlisle walking out on the court, yelling at somebody or getting at somebody. 2 hands, grab the ball. It's just brutal. And they prepped it. They knew it was coming because this is what the Rockets are, right? You can go back to the first game and you'd see similar stuff. The Pacers had 36 rebounds that night. The Rockets had 47. The Rockets had 13 offensive rebounds. The Pacers had 3. It's what they do. They did it the first time they played the Pacers, but it was awful in this game. It was almost the thing that cost the Pacers. Jarris Walker was pretty good in this game. I just want to talk about him because he's been a constant topic of conversation. Got rotation minutes in both halves, scored again, nice passing. Tony Bradley got his first statistical anything in 2 years. This was a fun game. It was very fun, but the rebounding was so concerning that it really sours some of the game. Regardless, good win for the Pacers. They're 10 games over 500. How about that? And a softer-ish part of their schedule coming up before their most important game of the season to date when they play Milwaukee next week. You'll know we'll have breakdowns of all of it right here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. I'll be in Atlanta for the next 2 Hawks games and then in Chicago for that game too. Really looking forward to all that. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony R. East. This podcast is on Twitter at Locked On Pacers. If you want to hear more of me talking about every game from last night with Wes Goldberg, Locked On NBA is the next place for you to go. Thank you guys for listening. Tomorrow, Brad Rowland from Locked On Hawks will join us to talk Pacers Hawks and about the Hawks making the conference finals in 2021 and not emulating that success. How can the Pacers avoid the same fate? Looking forward to that one. Thank you guys for listening today. We will see you very soon.